The Kichi-Asotamatowin EAL curriculum project was development began in 2018, but we didn't launch it until 2021. So it was summer of 2021. The project is a link-aligned language instruction for newcomers to Canada, aligned language curriculum. It's part of a larger project called the Indigenous Orientation Toolkit, or the IOTK, and it was developed in partnership with our local LIP, Immigration Partnership Winnipeg, and of course, two key primary Indigenous partnerships, and those were the Treaty Relations Commission of Manitoba and Community Service Learning at the University of Manitoba. So those are our key Indigenous partners. And right now the program is being delivered in person in some of the link programs around Manitoba. Everyone is aware who works in this sector that newcomers who come to Canada have almost zero understanding or education or information about the First Peoples of Canada. I don't think that's would be a surprise to anyone. For many years, I would say probably over the last 5 to 8 years, language teachers and coordinators had contacted me and asked me if I knew of any authentic embedded curriculums on this theme. And I didn't really know of any. There wasn't much that was out there. And teachers wanted something that they could use to teach their newcomer students about Indigenous history and contemporary issues, and also to combat many of the negative stereotypes that their students were coming to class with. Of course, another big reason that we focused on this curriculum was the call to action number 93 from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report. That call to action refers to the need to develop a more inclusive history of the diverse Indigenous peoples of Canada. And that would include teaching about the treaties and the history of residential schools. And so that was another impetus behind it. Finally, it was really important for teachers to know that as non-Indigenous individuals and as settlers themselves, that they could feel confident in teaching this history and teaching this information to their students. So that was a big part of the development as well, is making sure that we had that permission from Indigenous organizations and that we reassured teachers that that was something that they could do.
The goals of the IOTK project are to provide a resource for settlement agencies, or really anybody who's interested in learning, to help educate their staff and newcomers about Indigenous culture and history, and how that history impacts Indigenous people today. It also aims to help fight racism and stereotyping of Indigenous peoples by educating as well as building relationships between the two communities. It aims to bring together both Indigenous and newcomer communities to help strengthen those relationships.
Right now, the program is being used primarily by link programs, but it also has a component for more informal language contexts. So conversation classes, community groups, one-on-one tutoring. That is the way that we designed the curriculum. We wanted to make it as flexible and adaptable as possible. So it doesn't have a set number of hours per se. We knew that there was probably no way that teachers would have the time to be able to start at the beginning of the curriculum and work all the way through it from start to finish. And so we kind of designed it a bit like a menu where teachers could pick and choose components of it. So it's full of activities and additional resources and skill building, skill using, and assessment tasks as per the requirements of PBLA. The program has been developed in a way that it will be able to be used from literacy all the way up to CLB 8. So a lot of the materials that are out there, people will find there's lots for CLB 5, 6, 7, 8. There's not a lot for those lower levels. And so that was a key consideration as well, that we didn't want to miss that.
Some key features that I think contribute to this project's effectiveness is there's a lot of heart that went into the work that has been done. And so many people who have worked on it have come back themselves and commented how much they've learned and how inspired they are to keep wanting to learn themselves. There's also a big sense of community in this project. And this type of work is not something that is easy to do. It's ask questions that can be difficult make people feel uncomfortable. So that sense of community goes a long way for educating and unlearning of thoughts or beliefs that are inherently racist. I think one of the very key features about this project is how it helps form relationships through finding commonality in different communities and in different cultures. Being able to build that connection through seeing the shared struggles that people have faced in the past and how they relate to each other.
Partnerships are key to this work, and especially critical are the Indigenous partnerships. Very evident as we started the writing that most of our writers, for the most part, are non-Indigenous, even though we do try to hire Indigenous writers who also have that expertise in PBLA and language delivery. It's essential that we have the content input and the review that comes from our Indigenous partners. They develop all of the themes, so we are not involved in developing the themes. They direct us to resources. They read through all of the draft versions of the curriculum, and they provide all the key insights and corrections when those are needed. So that's critical for us. The whole curriculum is hosted on the MANSO website. It will be as well available on the IOTK website. It's been shared on Tutela and on SettleNet. So we have shared it nationally. It's been shared through NLAB, through the Newcomer Language Advisory Body as well. And so we are really trying to get the materials and the information out there on a wider scale. There are 7 themes in this larger IOTK, or Indigenous Orient Toolkit project. So this first theme was Kichi-Asotamatowin, the land and treaties. And then the second theme, which we have almost completed, Pimikowisawin, which refers to assimilative policies. Ayawadwakia is also in development, that is worldview and spirituality. And then there are 4 additional themes after that: resilience and resurgence, which we will be starting in April, families, Métis, and connection to the land. We have done mainly qualitative evaluation of the project so far. When we reach out for information and feedback from teachers and volunteers and whoever has used the materials, we're asking for the level that they used. So did they use the literacy component? Did they use, were their students a higher level? We're asking for as well if it was a link program or whether it was some other kind of program, so whether it was a different informal context that they used it in. We are also asking for information on how teachers felt it changed them as individuals, whether they experienced any kind of educational growth or internal growth or their own reconciliation journey, how that worked as they developed it. We ask for student testimonials and student stories that teachers will tell us about, so how it was received by their students. And that's really where we're trying to pick out more of that information on how students engaged with it. So not just did students get through, the PBLA assessments that were part of the curriculum, but did they really engage with it? Did they ask questions? Could they relate to something in their own culture or context? That's some of the information that we're trying to get at. So some of the feedback we've received from teachers. So overwhelmingly, after we did the first teacher launch, we received feedback from people saying, I have been looking for this kind of curriculum. It is inspiring to receive this curriculum. We are hearing from teachers as well that they are, they're educating themselves, they're learning, they're exploring different aspects of their own reconciliation journey as well. A couple of comments in particular about thank you for giving us permission and for giving us, for allowing us to know that it's okay for us to teach this and that we should be teaching this. You know, the Indigenous elder that we had come to the curriculum really shared openly and said, you know, it's okay to make mistakes. And a lot of teachers found that reassuring, and that they were really excited about getting these materials into the hands of their students.
As somebody who is a teacher of newcomer adults, I take it as a huge honor and also as a responsibility to also teach people about, of course, Canadian culture and history. To me, one of the most important and necessary aspects of learning about Canadian history is learning about our relationship with Indigenous people. So anytime I'm able to bring that information into the classroom is like gold. And getting this curriculum was truly a gift for me, because I had never thought about teaching treaties before. I didn't know that much about treaties myself. And it just became like, it opened a whole new window for me about how we could teach.
We do know that there are a couple of students from one of the higher level programs who wanted to do their own research projects on this material, really embraced it and decided that they wanted to explore more about this topic. And so that definitely is really encouraging to hear.
One of my students mentioned that by learning more about treaties and other aspects of Canada's relationship with Indigenous peoples, students can understand Canadian history and culture and also quickly integrate into all aspects of Canadian society. Another student mentioned that she now understands why reconciliation is so important and also why we need to treat Indigenous people with respect. Another student mentioned that she actually had zero knowledge about Indigenous history before covering the information about the Land and Treaties curriculum, and that she learned a lot from that.
The Indigenous Orientation Toolkit project is sort of a little bit of its first of its kind when it comes to settlement agencies. We have been getting a lot of interest that's been picking up lately as more people hear about it from word of mouth. We've had BC contact us, we've had Alberta, Saskatchewan, also now some people start to reach out from Ontario, as well as other LIPs located in Manitoba who are interested in just partnering with us to have us as a resource. Some other provinces have asked for assistance and like suggestions and advice, guidance, and not just in settlement agencies, also from actual like government agencies in other provinces.
Advice that I would give to organizations would be to encourage these organizations looking to create opportunities for Indigenous and newcomer communities to learn of and from each other. Organizations should build partnerships and take the time to listen to what Indigenous organizations have to say. This work takes time, so build that into your planning. It can't be rushed. Learn as much as you can about the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit in your community. Do some of this work before engaging with Indigenous organizations. Educate yourselves. Leadership and language training organizations should be encouraging professional development on the topic of First Peoples in Canada, so that the whole organization is working on their own reconciliation journey, not just teaching these materials to their learners. Organizations should encourage teachers at language programs to create discussion groups with one another, share tips and ideas and of what had worked well in teaching the curriculum, and to really share those best practices. Organizations should engage with local Indigenous organizations so that students can get out and meet Indigenous community members, visit powwows, bring in elders as speakers so that students are hearing the experiences and the stories firsthand, and also sharing their own. The Indigenous Orientation Toolkit curriculum for EAL learners is more than learning language skills. It goes beyond that into building bridges and relationships between communities that are new to Canada and communities that are Indigenous to Canada. This broadens awarenesses and broadens perspectives in the learners and in the participants of these programs. In creating this awareness of cultural knowledge, we continue on in strengthening all of those who make up Canada.
The past few years have shown us, as much as we think Canada is, not as racist as the US, that's just not true. We still have so much work that needs to be done here. And you do that by educating yourself, you do that by learning, and you do that by standing up for others when it's needed. When somebody tells you misinformation, you try to help them by giving them the correct information. And it needs to be more than just learning. It needs to be more than just information on a piece of paper. There needs to be that connection, because that's how you really help change people's minds and attitudes.
How I would consider this to be a success is if newcomers would take this information and would be the ambassadors of this information to their families and their communities. Many of us, people my age, we didn't receive any of this information when we were in school. So I think newcomers who get this information are farther ahead than we are. And they have the opportunity to be those ambassadors, to break down stereotypes themselves, not just in their own communities, but in the wider Canadian society as well.